When applied to a country, the term values, as in Armenian values, or Bhutanese values, or Chilean values, or Danish values, or Egyptian values, reflects the constant tension between a past and present, as well perhaps as an aspirational future. The tension between ideals captured in constitutions and laws and the realities on the ground. Canada provides a clear example of a country whose values are deliberately and legally defined, yet constantly debated and evolving. Relatively speaking, Canada is a geographically massive and culturally quite heterogeneous country, and any values thus ascribed to it will be reasonably differently expressed across its various regions and communities. Ultimately, Canadian values are a reflection of an ongoing and sometimes even incidental effort to balance individual rights with collective responsibilities within an exceptionally diverse society. Relative to its most broadly perceived values in 2025, then, Canada becomes something of a fascinating case, because it is one of few countries in the world that's consciously tried to shape or engineer, for perhaps lack of a better term, its national values from the top down, predominantly in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, and then promote them, at times aggressively, both to its own people and as well to the whole world. Just think about the slogan, "Diversity is our strength," and where have you heard that before, and since when? Evidence to this state of recency is practically self-evident. When someone, especially a born and raised Canadian and especially one born in the last half-century, encounters the term Canadian values, there is a short list of criteria, and one as if almost already risen to the status of tradition at this point, that typically springs to mind. Let's review a lucky 7 slate of items on that short list, and likewise the historically recent dates affiliated with them. Canadian value number 1, liberty and constitutional democracy. Codified in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms of 1982, the framework is rooted in the Westminster tradition of parliamentary governance and establishes the principle that all persons and governments are subject to the rule of law. The Charter articulates fundamental liberties such as freedom of conscience, expression, and assembly, which largely underpin the functioning of all other Canadian social values. Canadian value number 2, inclusivity, tolerance, and non-discrimination. Codified in the Charter in 1982, exemplified for instance in Canada's 2005 legalization of same-sex marriage, the 4th country in the world to do so. Canadian value number 3, bilingualism. Codified in the Official Languages Act of 1969 and reinforced ever since, it serves as a symbol of the compact between English and French Canada. Canadian value number 4, multiculturalism. Adopted as official government policy in 1971 and enshrined in the Constitution under Section 27 of the Charter in 1982, it also entered law under the Multiculturalism Act of 1988, making Canada the first country in the world to position multiculturalism as a formal and legal pillar of state policy. It remains today one of only 2 countries on Earth with such unambiguous official policy. Canadian value number 5, universal healthcare. Stemming from Saskatchewan model developed under the provincial government of Tommy Douglas in 1961, and achieving universal implementation across the country by 1971, before becoming national law under the Canada Health Act of 1984. It is widely and consistently touted as more than just a program, but a distinctive moral achievement. Canadian value number 6, apologetic and reconciliatory national identity. Particularly starting around the 1990s and characterized by the Residential Schools Apology in 2008, likewise the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of 2015 was instrumental in evolving reconciliation with Indigenous peoples into a core national project. Canadian value number 7, internationalism and collective defense. Exemplified through the government under Lester B. Pearson's involvement in the Suez Crisis of 1956, and through its consequent contribution in conceiving the first United Nations peacekeeping force, Canadian conflict resolution has largely evolved to prioritize an upkeep of the liberal international order. More recent provisions of financial and military aid to countries like Ukraine, alongside resource allocation, meant to compel social initiatives such as gender equality and LGBT rights internationally, cement a perception of Canadian values on the global stage. It becomes rather evident, therefore, that the most cited and recognized Canadian values today are elements defined and/or codified less than 70 years ago, a relatively short run for a relatively short list. Now, having established the aforementioned as sort of a foundational document of our very own, and at present, allow me therefore to proceed in addressing a crucial question that Canadian artists might well face concerning their engagements in the artworks they create. As someone working in the arts industry in Canada, do you have a responsibility to promote Canadian values in your work? In speaking for myself as an individual Canadian and one who holds a Canadian citizenship and no other, my conclusion is, in a word, no. And we could all keep sitting here now, eyes peeled, patiently maybe anticipating another volley of eloquent at best words, phrases, and passages that try in their utmost to capture the rationale, the ests, or the rhyme and reason behind my affirmative no. But sometimes words, no matter the language or the length and expertise, still can't tell the full story, and so I now just implore you to listen. What you are hearing is the work, the music of an amateur, which is me. It was created about 6 years ago, which, just for the record, was before artificial intelligence could have slapped it together in a matter of moments. The point is, to maybe save ourselves a whole lot of trouble, I propose answering the follow-up question of why no, with a question of my own, which is, can music without lyrics be art? And since the answer to that question can only reasonably be yes, then a reasonable next question is, at what point could anyone in 2025 reasonably ascribe any national values whatsoever to music without words? So as for me, a bona fide amateur artist whose interests and, dare I say, amateur skill set lie in such a wide variety of artistic pursuits, including music, I think I can safely escape, when and if necessary, from any imposition of value whatsoever other than probably that of pure aesthetics in my own work, with the one final caveat perhaps being that my art won't amount to criminality in whatever particular jurisdiction I happen to be in. The pathway for me and my own creative pursuits, then, is as wide and open as the aperture of reality permits, and I remain wholly and decidedly uncommitted to any one endeavor in particular, while with respect to any non-aesthetic so-called values meant to coincide with those pursuits, beyond breaking any established laws of the land, the sky's the limit. Finally, as for my personal attributions of value to art itself, including my own, this actually couldn't be more simple. The goal is to leave things in a better state or condition than when they were found, and that includes first and foremost hearts and minds.